Oh, hello everyone. Welcome back to the interviews of the European Livestock Voice. Today we are going to speak of another pretty hot topic, which is animal feed. And we are going to do that with Anton Van Den Brink, who's the Deputy Secretary General of FEFAC, who's the association carrying of animal feed in Europe. So welcome, Anton. How are you doing?
Great. Happy to be on the show. Thank you so much.
So thank you for joining us. If you want to introduce better yourself to explain what is FEFAC and what FEFAC is doing, basically, I'd be very much obliged.
Yeah. No, thank you. FEFAC is the association, the European Association of European Compound Feed and Premix Manufacturers. We've been around in Brussels for over 60 years now. And I've been with FEFAC for about precisely 10 years now, and currently in the role of Deputy Secretary General. But I've been working mostly in sustainability in the past few years.
Well, I didn't know you were so old as an association, so I understand why you have such a background of information. And by the way, with you, we're going to speak today of a specific topic, which is circular feed, because we know how animal feed is important when it comes to circular economy. And you have, as a FEFAC, recently published a report about circular feed, and I wanted to ask you, please, to explain us something more about that, and basically what's the meaning of circular feed, and how can livestock farming contribute to a concrete circular economy?
Yeah, so we did this publication last year, and it's really this concept of circular feed that we are trying to get attention for. So the role of compound feed manufacturing in circular economy, it's not new. We've been doing it for a longer time, but it's about giving it the best, the most appropriate name and making it understandable to the relevant stakeholder community. So in the past years, we actually spoken mostly about the use of co-products, but this, let's say this new concept, circular feed, it allows to give it a slightly more qualitative approach. So we actually developed a conceptual definition. We developed it ourselves. So we're talking about non-food grade ingredients recovered as a secondary raw material from the local circular economy with a low land use footprint. So clearly this idea of secondary raw material is very much derived from circular economy literature. But the idea is that we talk about some kind of residual kind of flows coming from processes that have had a different main production purpose. And the key connection to livestock farming here is that we would say that the use of circular feed can be seen as a key indicator for sustainability. So for livestock farming, but also very much the resulting animal products. This is really a story about nutrient upcycling. You look at what the material started out as, and how it in the end reaches the consumer, let's say, through the whole nutrient flows. So the farm animal, if you put that in the middle, it really becomes a converter, an upgrader of the material that is, in essence, not of food grade nature. So meaning it would not be consumed by humans. And this animal turns it into food, eggs, milk, meat, fish. And that's what we really know. It's highly bioavailable nutrients.
And some specific examples of this, upcycling, because it's pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, there's loads of examples, and I hope also the examples illustrate that the compound feed manufacturing really helps to make plant-based production and animal production complementary. It really creates a certain kind of convergence, and maybe also reason to not separate them completely. But talk about sugar production. You have sugar beet pulp, molasses that result from that. Beer production, you have the brewer's grains, the brewer's spent grains and the spent yeast, potato peels that result from potato processing, sunflower oil production, you have the sunflower meal, wheat flour milling, the wheat bran. Think about juice manufacturing. I mean, we all know it comes in a certain with peels and skins. They can end up in feed. From cheese production, think about whey and skim milk powder. But also further down the chain, if you talk about animal rendering, so you talk about after slaughtering, how to make most value of the animal carcass, you have processed animal proteins, which are allowed under certain conditions for certain type of farm animals. And maybe a very exciting, a very interesting recent example is oat pulp. So left over from oat milk production. This made the news quite a bit, as typically oat milk, if you can call it milk, ends up in let's say the vegan food marketing. But even there, yeah, there you have animal feed or livestock sector able to kind of harness the residual flows that result from there and turn it into animal food. So this really allows to keep those food losses in the food chain. Maybe another example to highlight is former foodstuffs. So you talk about products that were intended really for food production, but due to a production or logistical complication, it's no longer destined to the human consumption market. So it starts as a foodstuff and then stops being a foodstuff for a reason. So hence former foodstuff. And there you have actually loads of examples. If I just mention the production of bread, chocolates, biscuits, breakfast cereals, crisps, candy, pastry, yogurts, pasta, sodas, at all these at factory level stage, food factory level stage, there is always some unintentional losses, meaning they can no longer have a role or no longer be placed on the human consumption market. And yeah, you can still use them in animal feed for food producing animals. And they're actually linked really much up with the topic of food waste, because there you literally prevent food waste from occurring. That's a legal fact. And these flows, they are very high quality material, as they were initially intended for food production, of course. So some of the examples mentioned, there may well be some examples of a food product that is made out of it, but we have to keep in mind we're overall speaking of very large quantities of industrial flows. So there's quite a lot of material going around. And in general, this is maybe a bit of an economic factor or a market perspective, that if you talk about the competition between feed and food, and in this case, you would never say that there is a real competition taking place between feed and food, because once there is a food market development for it, if there's food demand from the food market, its market value will become too high for animal feed manufacturers. So that's something we always have to point out. So we may well end up losing sometimes what we think is circular feed just because a food market has developed, which is no problem at all. That's a fact of life.
And talking about policymakers, by the way, what are the criticalities? Let's say I'm expecting that is not everything very linear and easy. So I'm asking you basically, how can the EU regulatory framework promote a higher level of circularity in the EU food systems? Yeah,
that's a good question, because if think about the publication and examples I've mentioned, yeah, they're nothing new. We would almost call them a traditional feed ingredients already. But in this publication we did last year, we also kind of shed light on where we think there are potential new ways of nutrient upcycling through animal nutrition, calling kind of new sources of circular feed. And yeah, current legislation is not adapted to that, or let's say it was once designed in a certain way following certain periods of crises, without taking that kind of innovation in mind, which is a logical consequence of the time when feed legislation was developed, which is in the years 2000s. So yeah, when I talk about innovation and or new ways of, safety is of course paramount. We're not talking about taking any risk, not making any compromises there. But again, let's use an example. There's a lot of discussion around insect farming. I think a very interesting sector, a lot of potential. But for the moment, you can only feed a farmed insect what you could feed directly to a chicken or a pig. It's just on the same level of livestock farming. So in this publication, we also kind of try to imagine the scenario that you would feed insects with certain flows that cannot go directly to pigs or poultry, but you would use the processed insect material in feed for pigs or poultry. So you know, that's still maybe a bit science fiction in a sense of legislative terms. I mean, there's plenty of research going into this, but if you could imagine this kind of intermediate organism stage, and algae could be another example. Then there is a whole resource of let's say nutrients that could become available to the livestock sector, and again we have to take this into account from the from a nutrient upcycling perspective. So yeah, that's not there yet. We would certainly hope that sustainable food systems framework takes that systems approach, systems thinking, and would be able to kind of build circularity into legislation making and really drive these kind of developments. Again, only if they are considered safe.
Is it possible, yes, to download this report from your website? If somebody wants to deepen the subject, can you tell us how?
Yeah, it's available on our website. We've also dedicated a webinar to it, where we had some of those, let's call them aspiring examples speak. Also, the example of recycled phosphorus is something also, we now get the phosphorus from the mines, but could we get the phosphorus also from other sources? And FEFAC will have its congress in June this year, and in Sweden, actually circular feed is the key theme. So it's a topic that we are very keen on pushing forward and making it our cornerstone contribution to sustainable food systems.
Oh, great, and thank you, because I mean, as far as I know, the livestock sector was always very much based on circular economy, how we call it today, and the fact that we can show how it's made today also through innovation and the proper legislation is very important. So thank you very much. I'll be back to you sooner or later, because for sure, when we speak about animal feed, today we focused on circular feed and circular economy, but we are going to speak also about other hot topics sooner or later, like as you have mentioned, the animal feed, food, supposed competition, deforestation, and so on and so forth. I know that you have a lot to talk about and many myths to debunk, so I'll be back to you as soon as possible. And for the time being, I thank you very much for your time. And again, see you soon and take care.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be on the show. You take care.